and welcome to Joseph's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, you don't need to like, follow, or subscribe. Just put the videos out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. And today, I want to talk to you a little bit about modular landscaping and what I'm up to with some key sections of the layout. As you're aware, obviously we've got two lines that are going to be traveling across the back here that make their way around, and sometimes I want to sort of frame them off so it doesn't look like why would we see two trains here and two trains there. But there are little windows, as we discussed, where you'll see them in some spots to give just a little bit of a focal point. So as you can see here, I've already taken some of my extruded foam board here and just cut it with the knife to some lengths into some blocks here. I've just used the Gorilla Glue, although Styro-Goo is a better adhesive, I will say that. It's not easily accessible for me, but the traditional Gorilla Glue does a reasonably solid job. So I've just sort of cut it into some lengths like this and glued it together and built it up. And I've just added a few rock faces here and all the rest of it. The next thing I'm about to do is come with our sculptor mold and now start to form up a little bit of terrain. Once that's done, and you can see I've got the baking paper down, because once that's done and it's dried, we'll come along and dust it, put our PVA down, then we're going to dust it with a little bit of dirt to give it that texture that we're looking for, and then we can shake it all off, vacuum off, and then just tidy it up accordingly and add some greenery. But it's not about I'm using the baking paper to keep everything clean and save anything from hitting the back line behind me. The whole idea is this entire section here, of course, does just lift out. And that's always going to be the case. There'll be some bushes and things across the bottom. But the whole idea is that not just because if we need to remove it and come in here, because, for example, if we take it out now, and you'll recall that we left these little openings for the wires and stuff to happen back here. It's more so the practicality of getting here and cleaning track behind here. Now, of course, I've always been about practicality in this build, of course. And as a result, I could easily put my hand back here and clean the tracks. But it's nice to think that if you do need to do something, there are sections that will just open up easily. Now, that's exactly how I built my original train set. And in which case I had pre-wrapped all the buildings in some cling film, glad wrap, saran wrap, whatever you want to call it, and put them down, did the landscaping, and take the building out, and then it would slide straight back into place, and no one actually knew that it wasn't permanently put into place. And the whole idea is I could lift it out, rethread new wires up underneath, sit it back down, and if I ever had to transport it. I'm not planning on doing any of those such things here, but I always think it's nice to have an accessible panel for whatever reason, particularly if there were some points back here that needed accessing. It's nice, it's clean, it's simple. This is the approach I'm going to do. So let's get that sculptor mold out now and get onto the next layer.
So while that's drying, let me just take you over to a little Pico kit here with these arches. Now, how did I cut that arch out? We're going to talk about it in a later video about using a hot wire, but in my case, I just took a standard knife, put it into the flame of a gas burner, waited till it went orange, and then just ran it through. Challenges, of course, with it. We'll talk about it in a future video, but let's see what we're up to while our sculptor mold is drying.
Right. So this little tunnel entrance here, to give the illusion that it's a dark tunnel going hopefully somewhere, we're not going to try and light up the other side. But what I've done is just taken some cork, it looks familiar, and then I've just given it some licks of paint here so it can soak in. And what we're going to do now is we're going to bend it into its shape here and set it in there. And the reason it's just cut out is just where it's going to as you can see, here's the section we've just painted up. The section here has a little knockout where it's going to sit, and I just need it to come into where this knockout goes.
So, of course, the point in the story is we took 3 or 4 of these Pico backline retaining walls. We glued it together to make one continuous piece that can slot in and out as needed. And here, of course, is the finished product of that particular retaining wall, which I think is quite smart, functional, slides in and out in one shot. Yes, of course, cue the music, but let's just have a look. I'm just painting some brown paint straight down on it. You'll see I knocked it into 2 pieces just because of the additional weight with that sculptor mold. It seemed sensible to do. A little bit of glue down, a little bit of greenery that we're just dusting over it. Now we're applying static grass, which we'll talk about in a future video. And here we are. And ta-da, here we go. Well, okay, not quite the official ta-da. We're not quite finished yet. So we have 1 and 2. And we've just obviously applied a little bit of water features, some puddles, a little bit of dust up here. Looks like it's the walking trail on the ridge of the mountain. And away we go. Now, what we've still got to do is get a handful of bushes and things like that are going to be attached and put some trees as it goes in. But we won't do that until it's in place and we sort of know how it's all going to fit together. But basically, this pretty much concludes where the modular landscaping ends. Now, if you just look back to this previous one in our video to do with creating our golf tee, you can see it's a nice module that slides in the corner and away we go. And I'm not saying all of the layout's going to have a build process like that with the landscaping, but where it can, I think this is going to work out very, very well. So let's just slide it into its location and see what we've ended up with exactly. Okay, so here's where it's going to be sitting, of course. And as we've already done the dirt road and things, it's pretty much right. Again, you're not really seeing the back line, so we're not going to worry about ballasting or doing anything like that. This section that's covered up is pretty much ready to be unveiled in an upcoming video. It's exceptionally exciting, so be prepared for that. But in the meantime, here's where we are. So let's grab our modules and slot them into place. And for the life of me, let's hope it was in this configuration because I truthfully can't remember. But I'm pretty sure we had one sitting over here. And here's our second one over here. Now there's a little bit of landscaping that has happened, not that I'm too worried about disturbing it, but I'm pretty sure we were sitting in about here. Now what we're going to obviously do here, give or take, I mean it does fit together a little better than that. I think it also sits back a little further, but basically here is where we're at. So a few trees, some bushes to hide where the joins of things are, and they'll be glued to the actual module themselves. So in the future, if we do need to get in and do something a bit tricky, highly unlikely, but if we do, we can just pinch it on the rock face itself, lift it off, pull it out and do what we need. So the modules themselves won't be glued in or anything, they'll just sort of sit like that. But I think that's a nice, easy way to frame off the back there and still give us practical use as needed. We're obviously, as you can see, sorry all this stuff's in the way, but all in good time. As you can see, on this particular section, we're going to create a little bit of a water gully or a little bit of a billabong situation over here where it's just things, some high reeds and things, and we'll decorate that up as needed. But ladies and gentlemen, that really does conclude what I need to say in modular landscaping. As you've seen with the golf course and a few other sections, we're going to sort of try and do it like this. It allows me to be building off the board where possible to do what I need to do, especially with static grasses, as we can tip it upside down, recycle the bits and then relay again. So it's not absolutely perfect and we can always come back and revisit and do what we need or replace this as required. But I hope it's given you some tremendous ideas on some things you can do. Sorry, Joseph, if I could just interject for a moment, since I've had a great idea here before we wrap up. This top trail I made reference of, and particularly when we swing around here, what looks like a nice single trail, and some of my people might know what I'm about to suggest here, we're obviously going to join this section up a little bit better, but you'll see there might be a slight drop off. Now, what could possibly be better to fulfill this scene than, since it's one of my passions in life that I enjoyed as a younger gentleman, mountain bike riding. So I think what I've done is I've managed to find a particular series of mountain bike riders on bikes that we will customize. I'm gonna create a little drop off or some sort of almost a jump or something that they can transverse here, and I think that is going to complete that scene very nicely. Again, we're still needing to put our bushes, shrubs, some trees, etc. Reeds across the bottom. But I think we're going to be able to really create a little bit of a feature here, including another surprise I have planned for the forestry area, but you'll see coming up. In the meantime, you're going to get excited about what's going on under the sheet here. Now back to Joseph and your regular broadcasting schedule. And especially for those on exhibition layouts and that, obviously you're building your layouts in modules anyway, but I just hope it's a little bit of an eye-opener anyway. As always, thank you so much for joining me. We'll be catching up with some surprises shortly on this side, and you're all dying to see what's going on when we need to be putting the ball at the other end of that golf course hole we've been working on. So until the next one, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Stay safe. Toodles!